The principle of this short talk is that social software brings groups together to discover and create value, but that the problem with that is that users only have so much time for social software, so that the vast majority of users don't have a high level of engagement with a given group. And most of us tend to be free riders on community value just because of all those pressures of time and commitments that keep us away from a high level of participation. But the idea of this presentation is to talk about the patterns that emerge when you have low threshold participation in a group, and to argue that that low level participation actually adds an enormous amount of value and a kind of collective intelligence to a social group online. So to illustrate this, we're going to look at the power law of participation. And this works on the principle that whenever you participate through something like Yammer, you leave a breadcrumb trail. So when you read something, it produces an activity log. You've downloaded something that you want to have a look at, print off, look at in your own time. That's useful because it's logged as an activity, and that gives information to the team at the university and the centres who can use that information in curriculum planning. And it's also useful to you because you can see what your peers are reading and engaging in. Beyond that, the next level up might be to like something. And again, that leaves a breadcrumb trail, and it gives us an impression of your views in relation to others. So how many people like the same things that you like? Do people like things that are different from what you like? And that's really valuable. And also, liking something acts as a pull to participation. So the person liked receives an email, and that's more likely to draw them back to participate further. And that's of use and value too. So what we're getting here is a kind of feedback loop through your actions within the network. It's feeding back into the network and adding value to it. Similarly, tagging things. On Yammer, it's called adding topics. What that does is to flag up what a particular post is about. And if we click on the topics, it will filter the content so that everything that's been tagged with that same term is pulled together in one place. So by tagging things, you're helping to organise it for yourself so that you can filter it, but you're also organising it for other people. And therefore, through relatively low level of engagement, you're adding value that's of use to you and of use to others. Beyond that, you might then begin to comment, and this certainly adds value in terms of content to the site. So questions that might be useful and valuable to other people, answers that tutors and peers can provide to one another. And so the content is beginning to build here. But also all of these low levels of participation are building social cohesion. So they're adding value in the sense that it's making the environment human and it's giving it a reason to exist. You might then move on to sharing things that you've found, and this is really valuable in terms of pooling found resources. It might be a YouTube video, it might be a really interesting article, some ethical guidelines, and that means that you're filtering all of the stuff that's on the web and harvesting the things that might be valuable to you and others, and then putting them into that smaller world of Yammer for people to find there. You're making it much easier for people to find things. And if that's done in a collaborative way, you can also gain from others sharing what they have found. Beyond that, you might then begin to form networks, so you could follow particular people in order to filter down to those who you think are particularly valuable. So you can click on the following tab at the top of the page and only see the content from those users who you particularly rate in terms of their contribution. And beyond that, you can join or create particular interest groups, and again that helps to filter and also to network. So in terms of finding information, that's enormously valuable, but it's also really valuable in terms of increasing your social capital. This is an idea of Bourdieu's, that when we go into social environments, our social capital, who we know, who we can draw on as for advice and guidance, or who we can use to form new links with new people, adds capital to us as individuals and can be a real source of value when we're looking for example, a new job or some important information that we need in order to perform well in an interview and so on. We could then move on to the next level up, which is to do with creating content. So we've talked about sharing content. At this next level, we might begin to compose something new. And in Yammer, you can do this through creating a note, and that acts as a single central copy of a document that everybody can add to and edit. So this is not just found resources that we're sharing with others, but it's new resources, and that can be enormously valuable both in terms of the content of that resource, but also in terms of the skills that you develop when you create it that you can then use again at some point in the future. And at this level, we're getting onto the higher order kinds of participation, such as collaboration, moderation, and leading a group. So you might propose new activities, you might initiate them, you might get people working together through using your networks, all enormously valuable. So the consequence of all of this participation is a kind of cornucopia of stuff that can be used in order to develop skills and in order to share content. So we're moving towards a real community of discovery of the type that we would aspire to for the BA in Education Professional Development. And what you end up with is a really beautiful thing that allows participation at all levels, at the low level peripheral stage of reading, liking, tagging, and that's the bedrock of the network. And if you're participating at that level, that's really important, because without all of that, none of the higher order stuff can really happen. So the beauty of something like Yammer is that it's very open at the periphery for those low level, low time commitment types of interaction that nonetheless add enormous value. But then we're moving on to something that's beyond that, which is about consuming and creating something at the same time, and that can lead on to greater things. So the way that we might use this power curve of participation in our delivery is as a kind of aspiration. So what kind of participation do you want to aspire to? What do you want to do in terms of your participation compared with the amount of time and resource you have available to contribute? And this is a really useful question in terms of your reflexive study, and something that could really inform your reflexive study, which you'll do later on in year 2, because you can reflect back on what kind of participation you've had, why you've decided to participate to a particular level, what you've got out of it, what you think others have gained from it. And if you start doing it now, you will have something to reflect upon when you come to do your reflective study later in the year.